twisted through 7 suns of gold, and the gypsy was insisting that his story
Hey
must
everyone,
be
welcome
told.
back to the Soberful podcast. I have a lovely guest with me today. I would like to welcome Sarah Bressard to the show. Hi, Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Veronica. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Now, Sarah is a spiritual life coach. Can you kind of explain a little bit more? What's a spiritual life coach?
Well, my training really happened when I started my Kundalini yoga practice as a teacher trainer in 2004. Um, I've really worked in a way that I would say is very holistic around my own healing. I am one of those people that found my trauma coming through in my body. So there was this experience of breaking down as a young person. I had this way about me. The way my trauma hit me was that I was so ashamed of what had happened to my life. Basically, my mother left when I was 13 and my father died when I was 16, that I did everything I could to appear as though nothing was wrong. And in fact, sort of went to lengths to make the picture look pretty shiny and what I imagined as perfect. And it seemed it was sort of successful for a while until my body started breaking down. It took a hit in my lungs through bronchial pneumonia, shingles, and a variety of things that really woke me up to the fact that if I didn't do something soon, there might not be a life left to live. So my first entry was really to go into a 2-year massage therapy program that taught me about the interconnection between the body, the mind, and the spirit. Something you would think we'd know intuitively as human beings, but something that had very much disconnected for me when trauma happened in my life.
And that's what you specialize in, isn't it? Trauma recovery.
It is. It is. Yeah. I think so oftentimes we get lost in the process, that we think there is just no hope. And it's the reason that I felt so strongly about putting on this trauma recovery summit. It's the reason that I do the work I do and that I practice daily to keep myself on a path of healing, because it is the consistency, it is the devotion to something that we recognize as having taken us to another level of our healing.
So that's what we want to talk about today, because it's very pertinent to my audience, which is addiction, alcohol, drug addiction,
Sure.
mental health, and trauma is at the root of so much addiction. So define trauma for me.
Well, years ago, I had one of my medical friends speak about trauma this way. And I think, it really identifies, at least to me, how trauma works in our lives. It's that experience that we take in, and it could be in any way, even in food, that comes in and doesn't go out, that stays in us. And in my own life, there was this energetic sense that when trauma hit, I left. Energetically, I left. And why did I leave? Because it no longer felt safe to be here. And so a lot of the work, the spiritual aspect of what I do is really based around helping people get that energetic element back in their life, back here, so that they can really do the work of their life, because you can't do it when your energy's somewhere else.
That I really like that. It's something that goes in and doesn't go out. It doesn't process. And it stays stuck in us, right? And that's why people need alcohol and drugs.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. It's really interesting, Veronica. I just recently had this experience. So with my group, I've just started a 40-day meditation on the new moon, which was last Saturday. And so we started this self-rejuvenation meditation. And I've been astounded, even in 4 or 5 days, what it has brought up for me. And I was trying to explain it to a colleague today, that what has happened is that I'm 62, and at 62, with all the work I've done in my life for the last many years, um, it's hard to get back to the original wound. It's hard to remember, but inevitably, as we continue on this path of healing, parts different parts come out to be healed, right? And that
Mm.
happened for me yesterday, where I just had this very emotional. I, I'll be very frank with you. I wanted to go blame my husband. I wanted to go to blame. And very soon after that, I realized, whoa, what are you doing? This is actually how you are acting, how you're responding to this. And to just capture that very tender part that was coming up for healing, um, felt so amazing, that I could actually sit in a place of welcoming it, rather than, as we're talking to your audience, pushing it away or numbing through it, or whatever that might be that you do to keep yourself apart from that original wound, if you will.
So, can you talk a little bit about how trauma is kind of trying to get our attention
Yeah.
when we don't realize what's happening? Because you mentioned like one of the things is like physical health.
Well, so much of being tuned into yourself, and that's a big part, I probably, of your work too, I'm sure, is getting people to have a relationship with what I call the witness consciousness, or the observer, this sort of objective view of yourself, where you are actually in line with what your life is doing. And when you can tune in at that level and start to listen to these cues, these whispers, these, sometimes they're 2x4s over the head, I've found, that there could be some reason here behind this, that potentially there is learning for us here. And even if it is just sort of leaning into it initially, um, whether, like for me, it was a physical situation, or possibly, it's an event where you're tremendously triggered, or there's been, uh, an episode, be it with alcohol or drugs or whatever it could be, to actually be able to step back and look at it from an objective point of view, rather than just sort of getting all wound up in it, and thinking that there's no purpose to it at all, at least to me, feels a whole lot more hopeful, and
Mm,
as though there's a lot more opportunity for growth and learning.
mm. So, I mean, there's a lot of growth that can come. This is the thing, right? We want to heal our trauma because we want to heal it, but there's a lot of growth.
Yeah.
You strike me as someone who's had a lot of growth from theirs.
Oh,
Can you
thank you
talk
for
a little
that.
bit? Can you talk a little bit about the growth that can come from it? Because it's all got lessons, hasn't it?
Yeah. So I live on a family property in the summertime, and I always call this family property the laboratory of my life, because brothers and sisters and children and aunts and uncles, and while I really care deeply for my family, they're also high stakes. They're also the people that can affect you most deeply. And um, so I also have this timeline for having lived on this property, and knowing how I would have reacted to a situation before, taken something personally, or suffered in a way that felt really, really deeply hurtful to me. And so this was one of those summers where I kind of looked back and I said, wow, that would have really affected me before. Isn't it amazing that I can, not that it stopped? Again, here's the objective view, right? It's like, wow, here I was. Now I'm here. Isn't that great? My God, what would have maybe before taken me a week or two to process, now it's an observation. it's a recognition, and it's a release. And that's growth in my life. It's who wants to suffer? I mean, who wants to suffer for, you know, huge amounts of time? No one. No one.
Could you break down that practice for me? Observation, recognition, and release. Can you kind of
Yeah.
deconstruct that a little bit? Because I kind of love that.
Sure. Yes. So observation is one of the tools. I have a book called The 10 Tools, and it's this stop, look, and listen type of approach, where rather than getting rolled up into the circumstances of our life, that we actually stop and say, whoa, something's happened. Something just happened. And then looking more deeply at what that possibly can be. What is it that I want to go to? In the beginning, for me, it was always blame. It was like I just wanted to blame somebody else. And now it's like, wow, there's many angles to this. And I know there's only one thing I can truly affect, and that's my own behavior. So how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to process this? And then once there is that sort of idea of processing, or wow, I got through this, there is this ability to release it and let it go. I want to say, I think it's important to say that one of the things that I've noticed in moving through trauma is that instead of these enormous triggers that were obstacles that got in my way when I had unresolved issues happen, what happens for me now is that my trauma, because I mean, let's be honest, your trauma is going to be your trauma. It's built, it's woven into the fabric of your life, right? So now what trauma is for me is it's a red flag. It's like, oh, here is one of those places. Here's one of those tender places that needs extra attention. That this is what and I love that. That, I believe, is growth too, is when we can turn towards the trauma rather than turning away from it, because we'll never outrun trauma. We'll never outrun it.
And so many people do try. I know I did. I know,
I did. Yeah.
right? And it's so true. And I get that a lot with my clients, and it's the fear. We've discovered that actually dealing with it is easier than running away from it or avoiding it. Do you think?
Yes. And I loved your story. I was so grateful to have the interview with you, Veronica, because you tell an extraordinary story of healing, and I'm really happy that my audience is going to have an opportunity to hear that. But I really do believe that we don't turn towards it because so oftentimes we don't feel strong enough to turn towards it. So the guidance that people like yourself can offer people to get to that point of being able to turn towards it. I don't know that it's necessarily the first step. I think it's the recognition of, wow, there is something here. And, I have to do something because I can't live like this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, I think that everyone comes up to that point where you just have this realizations that I cannot live like this anymore. There has to be a better, different way. And don't do it alone, right? Just don't do it alone.
I believe that when we make the decision in earnest, that, as you and I have heard, and probably many of your audience members too, it's as though, the path is beautifully laid out. You'll start to, me to sound too woo-woo, but you'll start to vibrate at a different level and be drawn to things and to people. That's what we're hoping for with this summit, is that, boy, what an opportunity to get to sit in front of 38 experts on trauma and start to say, wow, what she said, what he said, those are the kinds of messages that resonate deeply within me. And I'm going to explore that further. So yes, no reason to do this on your own. Please.
And so Sarah is running, organizing a wonderful trauma recovery summit. I'm taking part of it, and lots of it. Do you want to just quickly tell us about that? Because I'm sure people are listening are going to be like, "What? What's this summit? What?" Because you've got
Yes.
so many different. Tell us a little bit about it, and you guys can sign up for it. So it's free. It's totally free. You just have to register.
Yep.
Tell us a little
Yep.
bit about it.
Well, I've written quite a bit of content on it lately because we're promoting it. And this morning I was writing on it, and it really occurred to me, just like what I just said, that it's this opportunity to put all of these various experts in front of you and sit and listen to them. I have I have interviewed all of you, which has been my great honor, and learned so much. I mean, it has been extraordinary for me as a trauma survivor. It happens on October 6th through 9th, and you can get access to it through Trauma Recovery Summit / Veronica. Please sign up. It's free. We really, really would love to have you there. I can't say enough about these people that have participated in it. There is a world of knowledge, and I believe it can really do some good for the world.
Yeah, I was really flattered you asked me, and I was really impressed with your lineup. I've done a few summits, and it's very, very comprehensive. There's some great stuff there, and we'll give you the link again at the end, so you guys can sign up. What I want to learn more about is your healing processes. So you work with women, right? And
Yes,
and can
yes.
you tell us about some of the ways that the healing processes that you use, and what has helped women and that kind of stuff?
Yes, I would be happy to. I think for me, of course, we're always going to follow, I believe, the path that healed us. I mean, and many
Mm.
of us that are in this work, I would say pretty much everybody I interviewed had survived and moved through trauma. We're going to follow that path. That's our specialty. That's what we're experts on because it's healing us. So, the work I did, as I told you, it came through my body. I started as a massage therapist. I could not believe, how much I could feel through touch and this relationship with the physical body, and how stress had such an effect on the body. And from there, I was intrigued to go into Kundalini yoga. So that was, this ability to focus and really, uh, I would say, come into a discipline that taught me how important consistency is to this process. So my book Inside a Guide to the Resources Within is really based not on speaking to certain spiritual paths to take, but to get you into a discipline that you can hold for the rest of your life. And we do that through 40-day practices, 90-day practices, and 120-day practices. And basically that's what we're looking to do right in the beginning, is help you get into something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be meditation. So if meditation is what you're thinking, don't worry. There's all sorts of different ways to get into sadhana or consistent day practice. Um, and really from there, Veronica, once we have that foundation in place, then it is really customized. It really depends on where people are and how they, what is screaming the loudest, I guess, is really the way I go about it. But I have to first and foremost be sure that they have this practice under their belt. And sometimes that takes a while. So the communities I've founded, they have a big emphasis on there. There's people that join in that, like right now, we're doing this 40-day practice. And um, the most important thing I can say is, when I'm teaching about this experience, I don't want you to just take my word. There's nothing there if you're just taking my word for the experience. We have to make it your lived experience, or else there just isn't any meaning to it, really. No sustainable value.
So you are absolutely singing my song here when you said about practice. And this is
Mm.
one of my core messages with recovery from addiction is you don't go away, fix yourself, and then off you go. Now, in my opinion, I'm sure I don't even need to ask you this, but I'm sure you agree, everybody needs a spiritual personal development practice. And
Yes,
the key word there is practice. Is it's not something we do and then we're done. It's something, it's just like exercise, right? It's just like exercise. But it's for
that's right.
our spiritual and mental health. Can you talk a little bit more about those practices and perhaps what you practice? Because I think that this for me is probably the most important message. It's continuing because our circumstances change, right? Different
That's
things
right.
happen. We grow older, all this kind of stuff. And it's the practice that is it's the continuity of that, the consistency.
It really is. And well, I'll speak to my practice because I did earlier, regarding sort of those very, very young feelings that came up for me just yesterday. I now can't even believe how much of my day is devoted to self practice. So I have a formal practice. I wake up early because it's not heroic for me. It's just when I wake up and I come to my space where I do yoga and a meditation. So that that for me is pretty much every day, and it's just something I long for. I just love it now. It wasn't that way in the beginning. It was a chore, but very soon
Yeah.
after it becomes a joyful place to go. And what has come from that for me is, journaling. And I I love Kim Kranz. I don't know if you guys know who Kim Kranz is, but she has animal spirit cards and tarot cards, and I'll write on it. And I've even incorporated painting into my work now because it's just about joyful expression. It's like letting this spirit just come through and be heard and seen in whatever way it manifests. But what I've also noticed is that it's referenced the way I eat. How much time am I spending in nature? Who are the people I choose to be with? All of this now for me is a practice. My life is a practice. And
Mm.
I I know, Veronica, I hear you because, sometimes I sound like a broken record around the consistent practice, but I just can't speak enough to it. And the fascinating thing that I learned in the summit was that the clinicians were actually recommending that too and speaking to that same time period 40, 90, 120 days. And um, that is how long it takes to myelinate the brain and change neural pathways, and then we have a different experience of ourselves very not long after. I mean, in a very short amount of time. And that's when you start to say, my God, this really works. This really
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, I love that. Have you read Atomic Habits by any
I
chance?
No, I haven't, but I would
Oh,
love to.
you must. I love it because it says everything that I say, and it's all about the practice. It's all about and that's my experience as well. Is at first it does feel like a chore. It does, and
Yes.
then the key thing that happens is your life begins to improve. You just feel better. Not perfect, but you can. And then my brain made a link between when I do this stuff, I really like the way I feel. Like I really
Yes.
like being me. And it's directly related to this practice. And that's when it switches to being a joy. I had the exact same experience. It was like, okay, I'm gonna do this stuff because everyone tells me it's gonna make me feel better, and I'm just gonna keep doing it. And then I just noticed like, whoa, I feel comfortable in my own skin. I feel different. And I knew, and again, I remember when I had my kids, both times I stopped doing everything and I didn't like how I felt. And I started again, and very quickly I was restored to this kind of really nice state that I'm just used to living in now. I notice it very quickly if I'm off the beam. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yes. Well, let's not forget how much room trauma takes up in the brain.
Yes.
Let's not forget that,
Mm.
and I think that that's what we're doing is when we come to practice, that we are clearing space for things to come in. And I read just the other day that you can't think your way to spiritual freedom. It is not one of the gifts of the intellect. I know, I did the same thing. I was like, what?
You
That is,
can't think your way to spiritual freedom. Oh my God, I'm taking that.
and it's not the gift to the intellect, which I loved. It wasn't, we often hear, oh, the ego, it's a bad thing. But I loved how that was put, because it was like, it's not one of the gifts of the intellect. There's many gifts
Yeah.
of the intellect, but that's not one of them. So it speaks to what we're talking about, Veronica, because in the beginning, we actually are thinking about it, right? It's like, get myself to the mat, for whatever amount of time it is. And then very soon after that it goes from discipline to dedication to devotion. It's just like,
Mm. Mm.
oh, I'm the best version of myself when I do this. I want to do more
Yeah.
of that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you can't think your way. You have to practice your way. There's also some humility in that, I think, as well. And also this is the really good news. It works for everybody. And what, I do completely different things to you, but they're both the same thing,
Right.
it's an internal reflection, it's internal work. So there's lots of variations and you can find what fits you. The key thing here is the practice, the consistency of it. That's the key
That's
thing, not that you have to do it the way Sarah does it, or have to do it, I do it, or whatever. It's there's lots of flexibility, which I found a big relief, because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to meditate every morning for 90 minutes at sunrise, and ugh. And it's not actually, and it's also not it's not remotely, as back to what we were saying, it's not hard. It requires effort. Avoiding the trauma, that's hard. That takes hard work, right?
You said something important there, and I want to just clarify this too, because in the beginning, I'll typically, if I'm working with a group, I'll typically start them on like a 3-minute practice. And I do ask that everybody do the same practice, whatever it is that I've
Mm-hmm.
decided upon. And the reason being is that, and this is another important thing that you said earlier, Veronica, about not doing it alone. This is the reason you want a guide, because if I know what they are all doing, and there is a situation that comes up, something that comes up that needs to be released, that's frightening or scary, then we have the ability to modify what we are asking you to do as teachers. So there is a certain importance in the beginning in following whose ever guidance you are taking until you feel confident enough to go it on your own and create whatever practice is
Yes.
drawn to
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I had exactly the same experience. Yeah, it's start off like tight with what your teacher is showing you, and then you can begin to expand on that and explore, because that's growth, right? And
That's right.
and I always point out, I think if we try and stay too rigid and it has to be exactly like this, that's magical thinking. Right? It's not
Yes.
magic. There's kind of, it's in the growth and the mess and the figuring out things that fit you, but it's the consistently doing it. Oh, I love that. That's right up my street.
Yes. Yes. And the thinking, it, like we just said, it is thinking about it in the beginning, and
Mm,
very soon after that there starts to be a relationship with the spirit where it's like, why am I being drawn to breathe like that? Why am
mm,
I called to go to the ocean and take a swim? You know, whatever it might be, you start to really
mm,
start trusting, I would say. You start
mm,
trusting these inclinations, these
mm,
pings, these
mm,
downloads, whatever you want to call it.
And we become fully connected with ourselves, which is the kind of destination for healing from trauma, would you say?
I would say so.
Thank you so much. I know everybody listening to this is going to really relate and get a lot out of it. And I know they're going to get a lot out of the summit. Just give people the details of that again and where they can sign up.
Sure thing. So it's October, this coming October 6th through 9th, and you can sign up. It's a free event, and it's Trauma Recovery Summit / Veronica, and we will welcome you warmly.
Yeah, and there's what, 30, did you say 38 experts there all talking about?
We're still interviewing. It's just
Wow.
amazing. We still have people that are asking to come aboard, and we are so excited to have them. So yes, we've got quite a crew.
Yeah, there's so much value there. I know there's some great experts, and lots of people, lots of them are giving away like free things, handouts, some ebooks, some
Bonuses.
bonuses, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So, I mean, you
Yep.
can't really go wrong there. You just got to sign up and register. So make sure you guys do that. Sarah, thank you so much. Your work is so important. I totally resonate with everything you teach and the way you teach. It's a really, really important message, and I hope people listening to this, if and most people listening to this will have some kind of trauma, will feel some hope, some possibility that they could be okay. Any kind of final thoughts for them, people who perhaps haven't done anything yet, who are really kind of like, oh,
Absolutely. I would say honor those feelings. Those are the feelings that are really going to be the trajectory of your life. If you are feeling as though you are alone on this path or in need in any way, look deeper into that. Find somebody that can guide you. The Trauma Recovery Summit will be a great place for you to start.
yeah, information. Start with information. I think
Yes,
it's a good way to get your feet wet, isn't it? No, you don't have to commit. You can just sort of,
that's right.
get your feet wet and see kind of what really hits home. And I think I can guarantee that something will really resonate. Something will jump out at you, and it will be different for everybody. And I think it's really, just start there. I think that's wonderful. Sarah, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much for everybody for listening. Let me know what you think about the episode. You can find me on Instagram, Veronica J Valley, and I have a link on my Instagram to register for the summit. If you're on my emailing list and Facebook, it's all over the place. So you'll be able to find the link really easily. If you can't find it, message me and I'll get it to you. All right, everybody,
Oh.
take care. Thanks for listening. See you next week.